Thank you for coming. My name is Brian McGovern. I'm the Western Sales Manager for Steinberg. Thank you to Reese and Phil and the team here for allowing us to come by. And this is Greg. He's our Senior Product Specialist. Been with Steinberg for 22 years, almost 21 years. And we're showing you Cubase 7. And then this is the next. Additionally, what you're hearing right now is playing through our new UR22 USB interface. It's a 24-bit, 192, fully USB powered. Two of our D pre's on front, which I would challenge against any mic pre in this store right now, to be honest with you. You get latency-free monitoring with your input and DAW blend knob. You get mic line on both the two inputs. Channel 2 will give you a high Z. You have a phone knob or volume knob. You have an output knob for your balanced outputs. On the back, you have MIDI, which is our first hardware interface since we've been part of the Yamaha family in 2005 that has MIDI on it. You have phantom power on both channels. Like I said, it's fully USB powered. So 24-bit, 192, great sound of mic pre's. Ships with Cubase AI. You'll get a free upgrade to AI 7 because that will support 192, 150 bucks. So if you need a portable box, boom. And then if you have certain flavors at home, because for 2 more extra pre's, it can serve that's duty there. Should you be interested in any product like this tonight, I'm extending a 5% discount. 5% helps. You know, it's in that realm of what I can do. Talk to Phil, Reese, Jim, or any of the guys here, and they can take care of you. That being said, I'll hand it over to Greg and he'll do his thing. Thank you. And here, actually, I'll pass this around so you can feel it. It's built like a tank. You know, the running joke this week, we've been traveling all week, and me and Greg travel a lot. I've known Greg 12, 13 years now. Is I hit him in the head with this, and I guarantee it hurts. Okay, so it's built extremely well.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
All right,
so we're going to take a look at Cubase 7. When we came out with Cubase 7 in December, we wanted to address a lot of different customer needs. And we have such a wide variety of customers at Steinberg. So, where people are doing like gospel, hip hop, soundtracks. If you're Hans Zimmer, I just was reading an article yesterday in USA Today about Hans Zimmer, and he mentioned how much he just does everything in Cubase, and how Steinberg's great for actually, meeting his needs within such a small market segment, or big projects as well. But one of the things that we want to do is we have a lot of film composers that use Cubase, and one of the things that film composers want to do is to try to get the MIDI orchestra. So you could actually simulate what a real orchestra sounds like and plays like in the MIDI domain. One of the problems gets to be when you get into like the real details is working with tuning, because when we deal with MIDI information, that's going to be in equal temperament, where they divide the octave evenly, and basically all the keys are relatively in tune, but they're not perfectly scientifically in tune. But a real orchestra or a real choral group will actually kind of seek pure temperament, so that as they're playing, they'll kind of tune to themselves to be more in tune. And we can't really do that in the MIDI realm because we're kind of dealing with keyboards as the basis for our instruments. And I remember about 8 or 9 years ago working with Donald Fagen for a couple days when you guys knew Ondo set up. And I was just kind of chatting with him as we're installing and getting stuff set up, like how he does his songwriting process. And I was like, oh, do you just do MIDI stuff? He's like, yeah, I tend not to use MIDI because the equal temperament really bothers my ears. So when you listen to like Steely Dan stuff, you wonder why the Rhodes sound so cool. His Rhodes is actually tuned to pure temperament. So it's only, perfectly in tune, but in certain keys and other keys, it's going to be really sounds bad, not in tune. But to him, that's the only way it sounds really correct. But even like Stevie Wonder, A is not 440, it's 442. Very distinctly. So like everything in his studio will be tuned to 442 for A. So we wanted to try to bring kind of a pure temperament way of working with MIDI data in a equal temperament world. So if I right click here, I could actually go to my project setup And once the project's set up, we could actually activate what we call her mode tuning. So once I activate this, I'm going to put this into like Baroque mode, and I can actually choose which particular tracks follow her mode tuning and which don't. So I did an incredibly boring composition of pure triads and wind instruments, so without any vibrato, so we could actually hear what equal temperament sounds like. So let's go ahead and just listen to it here. Now, as we listen to it, it's almost like you want to tune the guitar on certain chords. So you'll hear. Now, the bottom tracks I've set to the her mode tuning, and this will be in pure temperament here. Temperament and a pure temperament together. So you can hear, no, we don't have a chorusing plug-in on. Right? But that's just how out of tune equal temperament really is compared to pure temperament. So if you want to do like hyper accurate mock-ups and tunings of real instruments, so like string instruments or choral pieces, or even like a fretless bass, you can actually just come right here and use a her mode tuning and then achieve that in the MIDI realm for the first time. Pretty cool? All right, now the next thing we're going to look at is a brand new feature that was incorporated into Cubase called the chord track. And this is kind of started off as like, you know, oh, we can help people come up with a song idea. And then we said, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we could do this and this and this and add some other elements? So probably many of us, when we're working on a song, you may have like, okay, maybe like a little drum pattern, and you kind of lay out maybe a chord progression. It's a very typical way of working with songs. So let's say I have my drum pattern here, and I'm going to have the Fender Rhodes loaded up, a Neo Soul keys. And what I want to do is I can add a chord track here. So I'm going to put it into loop mode. So come here, let's put this in loop. So I want to add some different chord track elements. So what I'm going to do now is just right click and grab my pencil tool. And I'm just going to like draw in a couple of chord events. So I'm going to click on my lower right hand corner here, and then I'll add different chord events. I use my arrow keys to navigate back and forth. So say, okay, maybe I want to start off, let's say the key of F, so I'll do like an F major chord. And then maybe the next chord, I'll hit my arrow key. We'll do the cliche, let's go to the 4s and the B flat. And then maybe I'll end on a C chord. But let's say I don't know a good chord to get from the B flat to the C chord. I'm out of ideas. So what I can do is actually go to the chord assistant and come right here, and it'll actually do an analysis. We activate gap mode, and you can have different levels of complexity, and it will give you chord suggestions. So I can say, oh, it's maybe a G minor chord would be good. And let's say to make this a little more interesting, maybe I want to make this a 9th chord at the end. Now we can just kind of enter your chords here, but let's say you may not know the exact chord that you want to kind of work with. And you see this with a lot of gospel musicians, Phil, you probably see this, where they do these amazing chord voicings, they have no idea what chord they're playing. It's like, oh yeah, that sounds amazing. Yeah, what chord is it? No idea. You just put your fingers there and play it and it's cool. It's that chord. So what you can actually do is have MIDI input, and you can just hit any MIDI chord, and it'll capture and do the analysis for you. Now, as we're doing this, I can also do different kind of chord voicing. So if I come here, I can say, okay, I want this to be like more of a first inversion. Or okay, I want to do the root drop second chord. Or a second inversion. Or let's make this more for guitar voices. So I'm more like 3-string guitar triads. Or I want more maybe like a jazz guitar voicing. Or a piano voicing for different styles. Now if I select my Rhodes track right there, I could just come right here, go to my chord track, and now I could just say, oh, let's do chords to MIDI. And it will automatically lay out all of our chords for us in the MIDI domain right there. Now the chord track is also exciting because we can do some really cool things with existing parts. So I want to take these MIDI tracks here, and I could actually tell these MIDI tracks to follow the chords. So if I have like MIDI drums, I may not want it to transpose and turn like my hi-hats into tom-toms or shakers or something. So if I have a piece that's already done, I can come here and I want some different ideas. I can now say, okay, I want to start off with a G minor chord. So, okay, that's our G major. Let's make it a minor chord. And this will actually change all the different MIDI parts here to be within that chord. I go to the next bar, say, okay, I want an F major chord. So we'll go down to E flat, and back up to F. And kind of all my parts will be kind of like a harmonic parasite, if you will. And so okay, I want that to be an F7 chord. Good, or if I want that to be a sus4 chord. Let's say I was doing like a soundtrack, and we have tons of users doing soundtrack work in Cubase. So let's say if I'm here and I'm doing my soundtrack. Right. Now, the problem is a lot of times when you're working with soundtracks, you could have hundreds of different tracks. When I was at Hans Zimmer's studio in December, his opening template was up to 1,300 plus tracks. So imagine, okay, you're here and you want to say, okay, I want to take all my MIDI tracks. So let's say, okay, I want the chord to change coming up right here. So I want that to go down to an E chord. Let's say I want that to be like an F sharp minor. Let's say going to a G chord to end. So instead of having to do like your 300 tracks of string parts, you can just have that automatically follow right there. Or let's say the director's like, oh, make it that sad chord right there. I heard about that sad chord thing. I can just make it into from major to minor. That easily. But let's say we have a different scenario where we have different tracks. So let's say, okay, I have like a song that started with piano, that someone played piano part in, and they did a vocal, and they're kind of building the song based around that. So what we can do is actually select the piano part, right-click, go to chord track, and say, oh, let's do make chords. And this will now automatically create a chord track at the top based on the piano performance. So it just laid out basically your lead sheet for you. So you could actually just track musicians and have the guitar player look at the screen and they could just see all the chords derived from the piano part itself. So let's go ahead and kind of take a listen to it here. So some string parts, piano, like some guitar, vocal. Now, how many of us would like to have better keyboard playing skills? Like maybe I would love to play like Phil does.
Just call Phil.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes he may be busy, right? Or he may not want to play in our tracks. You know. So we all don't have that luxury of playing like Phil. So we thought it'd be cool. I'm going to open up our virtual keyboard, and then I'm going to select our string part here, and I'm going to just hit. Now we have a mode called Live Transform. So what I'm gonna do is come here, play the string parts here, and then as I play, it's automatically gonna change the notes based on the chords that are laid out here. So I'm gonna go ahead and just hit record, and I'm gonna hit the same 3 notes over and over again. So we'll come right here. It's actually recorded all those MIDI parts as if I played all the different chord changes just from hitting the same 3 notes over and over again.
You're fired, Phil.
Pretty cool?
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, comes in handy. Now, where it gets also very interesting is we've had amazing vocal editing capabilities with our Very Audio editor. So if I wanted to come here, now what's interesting is now we know what the chords are for a song, and what the Very Audio will basically do is figure out exactly what note, the rhythm, kind of like, you know, taking your vocal, doing the analysis here, and then saying, okay, let's just have it, you know, lay out and kind of turn your audio basically into like a MIDI event. Now we give you a new coloring option called chord track. So as I do this, I can come right here. So if I come here, I can actually say, okay, as I move, we have 3 different colors. So green means it's within the chord, blue means it's within the key or scale, red means it's out of key and out of chord. So green good, red bad. So I'll just come right here, let's say. So green, that note will work, or let's come here. Red note. Not so good. I think we heard that in the Grammys a couple times. Frank Ocean, was it?
Oh.
Yeah. It was. I guess you'd call them modal.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now let's say I'm listening to the vocal and everything's cool. So let's say, the singer's left. I want a harmony just to kind of make, you know, to really emphasize that little phrase right here to tell me why. So I'm going to select that phrase, and since we know what the chords are, we thought it'd be cool if you could go to your audio menu and go to, generate harmony voices. And I'm going to do, you can do up to 4 harmony voices at once. I'm going to do 2, and then I'll just come here. Now it's automatically generated to harmonies. I'll just kind of drop their volume just a little bit so they're kind of in context. And now. Or you go, okay, so I gave this a soprano and an alto. I could now also just come here to the chord track and say, oh, let's just make that a tenor voice instead. And now I'll just change the notes. Or, so Very Audio has always been pretty amazing because we could do like, you know, phenomenal vocal editing, but sometimes if you had like a lot of harmonies, you'd have to do one track at a time. So we thought it'd be really nifty if you could actually select your multiple parts and hit enter. And now you can see your different parts here. So as you just kind of rewind, I can say, okay, I want to see the original vocal, or now I want to see the what I turned into the tenor part or the alto voice. And I could just come right there. And now I could just edit my harmonies right against the lead vocal. So I can just come here and say, okay, as we do this. So like I said, so green good. And let's just jump to our other alto and drop. So that's some interesting. So this way you can see exactly what notes will work. And you could come here, adjust the vibrato on one particular voice, whatever you want to do. So you can edit your multiple parts together simultaneously. Question?
Can I ask you a real question? Going back to basics so I can grasp some of this. I'm used to just something simple like guitar tracks. What you're doing, basically you can lay in a track. Your vocals are obviously laid in, but then as some of what you're doing, you're not laying it in from a keyboard. You're creating digitally and putting it in, so you have the option of doing both. So if you had a MIDI guitar, can you have the same input dumping it in here, or do you have to go off the keyboard?
Yeah, you can record it as audio and MIDI.
Or just off a mic?
Either way, or both simultaneously.
And then as far as you manipulating, like when you're doing keys, you're doing that off just a straight keyboard, or is there a...
You can use any MIDI keyboard you want, or a MIDI guitar to play. So if you just played a MIDI guitar and hit the chords, it would automatically just change and follow all the, you know, if you had like weird jazz chords you weren't quite familiar with, you could just play, you know, any chord, and it would automatically just map. Pretty cool. So chord track, pretty nifty. Some useful stuff. All right, now one of the things that's changed most significantly is the mixer. And this is probably the biggest change. We actually said, okay, let's start from the ground up and just redo the mixer entirely. Why not? So one of the things that we figured out is that people are using different screen resolutions. Like I'm running 1920 by 1080 resolution. Right? And before, in previous versions of Cubase, you had kind of like your mixer could be, you could have a wide or narrow mixer view, or you could have it like some stuff placed on top or not. But a lot of times you could have like a lot of empty space on your mixer screen. So when I come over here, I could actually now just go to my mixer view. And what I'm able to do is to actually just choose to have the mixer completely scalable to whatever kind of screen resolution that I'm working with. So as I come over here, I can just have this all be completely scalable to, again, whatever resolution I want. So if I say, okay, I want that, or if I wanted to have more of a different screen resolution. So we could do all sorts of nifty stuff with that. Now, one of the other things that we want to do is to be able to actually take your mixer and take different areas of it and be able to kind of, one of the problems is we're seeing so many people having so many tracks in the mixer that when you open up the mixer you can't actually find things. So we wanted to kind of customize your mixer view here. So one, it's going to be completely scalable, but I could also see different icons across the top, different toolbars. I could right click here and I could actually customize these toolbars. So you may have a default view that looks like that, or if I want to see every possible toolbar, I could say, let's just show all of them. Or if I wanted to change the position visually of where the transport is, I could just come right here and say, okay, I want to go to my setup and take the transport and let's just move it to the right or move it to the left. And you could also say you have your transport control, your markers, time position. So a number of different elements right there. Now, we could also have a setup window, so we can pick and choose what elements we actually do want to see in the mixer. So if I wanted to hide the control room, or if I wanted to hide my pictures or notepad data, we come here. Now, one of the things that we're running into, and you see this with Naris, and we actually had a meeting at NAM about this particular issue, is kind of documentation of sessions. Because so many people will get a session and there's like 30 vocal tracks and no one ever says, use this one, or this is the chorus. Don't use this. This is bad. I recorded this to make the guitar player happy. Please don't use. So what you can actually do is come here and you can actually type in notes for each track that you could keep, so you can organize. So you can actually come here to the bass track and say, okay, this was SVT mic'd with RE20. So you can actually keep relevant notes right there. Now your notepad can also be, when you come right over here, you can export your notepad data as a standard text file. So you can email that to the next engineer or someone else that's working on a project later. We also thought it'd be cool if you could have track pictures. So if I come here and say, okay, I want to go to my snare track. I now want to come over there and, okay, that's my snare. I want to come here, this is my bass drum track, and coincidentally they all look like Yamaha instruments somehow. I don't know how that happened. Anyway.
What?
But we also thought it'd be cool if you didn't want the Yamaha instrument, because maybe some people do other things, you could actually now click on user pictures, and you can say, this is how the guitar amp was mic'd. And you could have a picture of the guitar amp directly in your mixer. This is how the snare drum is mic'd. This is the vocal track right here, and this is the mic we're using with the singer, Rode NTK, and this is how far the singer is back. So you can actually just take a quick picture and document that directly inside of your mixer. Now, if you don't want to see like your notepad data or your mixer, you can just come right here and just choose to hide those different elements from view. Now, we also before had a narrow mixer view and a wide mixer view. But in Cubase, we always use our G and H keys for zooming in and out. So now we can just use our G and H keys right here to zoom in on our mixer view. So I had eye surgery a few months ago. This was my mixer view choice size. So handy. Or now that my eyes are better, I can actually see more tracks laid out for me. Now we have a channel selector here on the left-hand side. So if I want to select different channels, I can just come here and choose. I see all of my channels in my project. Now this is also handy for selecting, like, okay, I want to take all of my drums and select those drum channels. I could also do non-contiguous tracks like this. So if those are my favorite channels. Probably a lot of us work with folder tracks. All right, so very, very handy. So we thought it'd be cool if you could actually collapse your folder tracks or hide all of your tracks based on the folder. Or what's even cooler is we said, oh, what if you're in the mixer and you want to select a bunch of channels, right click, and you could actually now move selected channels to a new folder track directly from the mixer. It's a great time saver. Now we also see this little circle to the left. And as we see this circle, if I don't want to see particular channels in a view, let's say, okay, I have a scratch vocal right here, I can just hide those channels from my mixer just by deactivating each one right there. Or the whole group of channels. Now we also have a zones tab where we see a circle on the left and a circle on the right hand side. So if I wanted to keep my master fader always kind of anchored to the right side and my lead vocal always anchored to the left, I can now just put my circles there, and as I scroll my mixer, my vocal channel will always be fixed there and my master output will always be fixed there. So where it's 5-1 or stereo, I can now just kind of scroll along and those channels will be fixed. And I can do that for multiple channels as well. So if I want 3 channels fixed on the left, or I want my groups and my master output fixed on the right hand side, we can just set it up just that easily. So very, very handy. Now, other things that we want to do is, because we see people with such large projects, one of the problems is being able to find particular tracks in the mixer. So we've probably all done a mix, all of a sudden something just kind of pops up and is really loud and you can't find the channel in the mixer. So what you can do here is we have different visibility agents. So what this is going to allow us to do is, as I'm playing along in my project, I can say I only want to see tracks that are playing at a very particular point in time where the cursor is. So I'm going to come here and say, show me only tracks that are playing at the cursor position right now. Wow. And it will automatically filter out everything that wasn't playing at that moment in time. Or if I want to see only the tracks between the locators. Now, when we see, like, film composers, one of the things that drives them crazy is they often have, a 1300 track tempo because they want all of their sounds available and accessible very easily. But they may not, like when I was at Hans's place, he's like, yeah, sometimes I'm only using 700 tracks. It's like, yeah, I feel your pain. So we said, wouldn't it be cool if you could actually come here and say, show tracks that only have data on them. So this way you're only seeing the tracks that actually have parts on them. So you're not looking at as many mixer channels that don't have anything going on as you do with data on them. I can also say, I only want to see the selected channels. So I'm going to say right here, show only selected channels in the mixer. Or I want to show all the channels, and I can now just kind of come here and say, okay, well, I want to hide these channels. I can just hide those particular channels right there. Or now I want to see all of the channels in the mixer. So very easy to kind of surgically filter what exact channels you want to see or not see in your mixer. Now going across the top, we have this project overview. So say I got like a bunch of tracks going on, I hear a lot, but I'm not seeing anything in my mixer. I can actually just swipe across the top here to navigate. We're also going to have metering, so when I go to my meters, I can right click, and I can say I want to meter the input, or post fader, or post banner. If I really wanted to, one of the great things is I could actually choose different preferences. So let's say if I come here, I could go to my preferences. If I click on the right button this time, that would help. So as you go to preferences, let's say I want to be very particular with my metering, I can now come right over here, and then we could actually go to your metering appearance, and you can say, okay, at minus 6 dB, turn this color, minus 3 dB, turn this color, minus 12 dB, turn this color. So you could actually set different metering color schemes by the actual dB value.
These strings.
Now, one of the things that we also wanted to improve was linking. So, sometimes you may want to take a number of different tracks. Let's say I want to take all my drums, and then as I'm working on my drums here, I say, okay, I want to take my drums, and I just wanted to move all of their volumes proportionally. So we have a quick link function. So our quick link, there's 2 different linking modes. So when we go to our quick link, I can activate that right here in my toolbar. So we see this little Q link icon right here, or I could just hit Shift plus Alt or Shift plus Option to engage that. So right now, if I hit Shift plus Alt, I move my fader of all the selected channels. They're now all linked together. As soon as I release, they're all independently being controlled. So Shift plus Alt, all linked. So if I want to adjust the panning of these, I can do that just that easily. So Shift plus Alt, all the elements are linked. Now if I wanted a permanent link,
sometimes.
I could click on the link button here, and now I could actually see my channel link groups. And what this is going to allow me to do is to actually see what the different components that I actually want linked. So in my drums, I probably don't want the EQ linked or my sends linked, because if I adjust the send for my snare, I probably don't want that same send amount for my kick drum. So I can say, okay, I probably want volume, automation, read write, and routing information to be linked. But I have a previous link group that I set up for my background vocals. And for my background vocals, I want the EQ. Let's say I have one singer that recorded 10 tracks of background vocals. I can say, okay, when I adjust the EQ on one of the channels within the link and the sends, because that is automatically applied across to all the channels that are within that linked group. So this way you can pick and choose exactly what components are linked together. So if you want to insert this, if you want to link all of your sends or inserts, no problems. So very, very powerful. So if you want temporary linking or a more kind of fixed, defined, more permanent link. And if even though it's a permanent link, you can still undo it and erase the linked group. Now something else we want to do to make stuff a little easier, we always heard that people had a hard time with EQ. Some people are magical at finding, just dialing in the right EQ frequencies. Some people have a real difficult time dialing in EQ. So we thought it'd be cool if we had this little EQ overview. So as we're playing, when we go to my snare track, I can click there and I see a spectrum analysis of what frequencies are going on in that channel. So this way I know what frequency is in EQ. Now if I want to grab my bass EQ, we see two lines here. One is the original audio, and the second line is what the EQ is doing to that audio. So very, very easy to dial in your EQ. Like what every engineer, traditional audio engineer wants to hear is like, oh, now you can EQ with your eyes, visually, instead of like listening to it. So, either way. So very easy to kind of find the frequencies of your EQ. Now below this, we're going to get into our channel racks. And this is kind of a new concept. And we wanted this to kind of function like a traditional mixer, but we're going to have a lot more flexibility than a traditional mixer. One of the concepts we're going to have is the routing tab. So when I actually click on tabs here, you may notice that as soon as I click on a tab, that the other tabs will open or close right there. So what I can do is I can actually pick what elements I want to see visible within the rack. So I could say, okay, I don't want to see this, or I want to see this. And we could also have a setting for exclusive. So if I uncheck that, I can now have multiple racks open simultaneously. So as I do that, I can see different sections. Now our top section will be routing. Now one of the things that I want to do is always come up with clever ideas to save mouse clicks so you don't have to juggle windows. So let's say I have all of my drums selected here. We thought it would be cool if I could right click and say, okay, I want to add a group channel based on the selected channels. So I can say, okay, I want to add like a drum parallel bus. I'm going to click right here. Let's type in drum parallel. And then we'll hit add track. Now, it's added that group track, and all of my drum tracks have now been routed and assigned to that newly defined group with one mouse click. So, true, I can go back, close the mixer, add a group channel, go to each of the channels, and manually route it to the newly defined group. You can still do that, or you could just one mouse click, create the group, and do all the assignments right there. Now, if I enable my quick link by Shift or Alt, I can now select all my drum tracks again and say, okay, I want these all to go to the same destination. So I can say, okay, I want these to go back to my previous drum bus. And now they're all assigned to the same exact destination. So again, enabling the quick link, I let go, the quick link is turned off. Now, let's say I was doing a live recording and I'm doing like 64 channels, and I'm doing it kind of I'm setting it up sequentially inside Cubase or Ondo, and I say, okay, I want this to go input 1, next channel 2, 3, 4, just kind of straight down the line. What I can do now is just hold down the Shift key, and I can say, okay, let's select input 1, and as I do that, it will now ripple the inputs or the outputs sequentially. So this way we can have all your ins and outs defined in a matter of a second or two for a large project. So very, very handy for that.
One more time. How did you do that one more time?
Okay, so to ripple, just the Shift key and select the first input
Well, I was gonna go switch.
for the selected channel. And if you want them all to go to the same destination, Shift plus Alt or Shift plus Option, depending on if you're Mac or PC. Now, we're going to basically now go down and follow the signal flow of the signal. And the next area we're going to look at is our pre-section. Now, the pre-section will allow us to actually see, we have a high cut and low cut filter right here. So I could do that before the channel hits the actual fader, before it hits an insert. I'm also going to have 48 dB of gain or cut. So if I want to take a particular track and adjust like all the volumes and give it a lot more gain, you can do that very easily. And also phase reverse. So I can say, okay, I want to take my snare bottom mic and my overheads and invert the phase. So I can do that before this signal actually hits the mixer. So kind of going that, so that's our pre-stage. So high cut, low cut filter, gain or cut up to 48 dB. So if you need a lot of gain, you can add it there, as well as phase inversion. Now directly below that, we're going to have our inserts. And again, this is following our signal flow. And let's say I have my drum bus here. Now a lot of times when we work with inserts, one of the problems gets to be you can have so many plugins that you can't find your plugin. There's nothing more frustrating than being able to have a plugin that you paid for and not be able to find it. Have we all been there? All right, what sort of describes that? That sucks? All right, so let's say we came up with some nifty search functions. So if I'm here on my main project window and I got 1,300 tracks, I say, I want to find a bass track. I click on the magnifying glass tool, I type in BA, and it's going to now filter out every selection by name. So no other tracks have the word BA in it. So now I can just click there, and it's going to select my bass track. I can do this in my mixer as well. So if I'm looking for particular tracks, like, okay, that guitar solo just ripped my head off, solo, find a guitar solo track for me. Okay, or let's deal with plugins. So let's say when I come here, I want drums bus. Okay, and as we're doing this, you go, okay, I see, let's say for my plugin, I can have all my plugins here. If you have like Waves plugins especially, you can see window after window after window choices, Here I can just say, okay, I'm looking for an envelope shaper plugin for my drums. SHA, oh. Hit enter, now the plugin is instantiated for you. Now a lot of us will come over here, so let's say, okay, I got my envelope shaper here. Let's say I really like this compressor setting, so I'm going to copy that compressor setting from that channel to that channel by holding down your Alt or Option key. Or if I wanted to just change the order of plugins, just drag and drop and change the order just that easily. If I wanted to get rid of a plugin, I could just come right here, choose no effect, and the plugin is gone. So very easy to kind of navigate within your plugins. Now a lot of us will use plugins to make stuff sound better, bigger, fuller, kind of enhance the sound. So let's say I'm enhancing the sound, and we're going to use the envelope shaper plugin. If you haven't used this for drums, it's the total kind of anti-suck plugin for drums. So when I come here, I'm just actually so I have this my drum bus. So I want a little more length. So now if I bypass this envelope shaper, and now turn it on again. to say, I think that sounds awesome, but if I can make it sound that good and not go all the way, maybe I could go further and make it better. All guilty of this. And then you totally screw up your track. You're like, oh, why did I do it? I was greedy. I was greedy in the mix. So what you can do now is there's a copy A to B function. And what this will allow you to do is actually come right here, and I can take that setting and kind of store it in a buffer. Now if I wanted to compare, I can just toggle back and forth between those two plugin sites. So very, very handy. So whether you're working on like a cool synth filter or new synth patch, you're just kind of like, taking different, oscillators and tweaking them. Very easy to kind of just, compare effectively. Now, we also see a lot of people using large control surfaces. And one of the problems with control surfaces is often you're looking at a tiny little screen that's trying to control parameters of like plugins that are on your big, beautiful screen. And sometimes assigning, okay, I want this knob in my controller to control this parameter, can be tough. So we actually came right over here. We give you a new remote control editor for the plugins. And Yamaha actually announced in the fall a brand new hardware controller called a Nuage, or if you wanted to actually support like Euphonics System 5 or Euphonics Artist Series or WK Audio. So you could actually come here and assign which plugin parameters are assigned to a particular knob on your hardware controller. So keep your eyes open for the Yamaha Nuage. It's going to be a very exciting controller. We'll see from Yamaha that's perfectly matched for Cubase and Ondo out of the box. Now, following our signal flow, we go on from our inserts to our EQs. So what we're going to see here is our EQs kind of laid out where we can actually see the value. So I can see my my overview here. But if I want to say, okay, I wanted to cut this, I can adjust my gain or cut right there. I can adjust the frequency or my Q factor right here for my EQ. So if someone says, oh yeah, cut 300 by 6 dB, you can do it very easily with your sliders. And again, this is following our signal flow. So we have our pre's, our inserts, our EQ. But sometimes we may want to kind of organize the racks a little bit too, so I can see more elements simultaneously. So I'm going to come here, and I'm going to save this as a rack configuration, because we want to make sure you can do stuff with fewer mouse clicks. So I'm going to say, okay, this is kind of everything in rack configuration 1. Now, for this next one, this is a really cool element that we've added. I'm going to just open up the channel strips. So I'm going to go to my racks, and I'm going to say, we're going to deselect all the racks except for the channel strips. Now, when we work with large format consoles, like a big analog, Neve, or SSL, the cool thing about them is every channel will have a great EQ, a great noise gate, awesome compressor, limiter, all on the console. Now, some of the problems are, it's like, okay, you may have a project where you're doing an R&B thing where the Neve compressor could be more for like aggressive rock music, and you want an SSL compressor for that channel. So what you have to do is buy an outboard SSL or API or third-party compressor and patch it in as an insert to kind of get a different flavor. But the beauty of this was you could kind of see how your mix was laid out. And we try to emulate this in the software realm by doing insert plugins, right? And we have a lot of flexibility because you can mix and match different styles, different consoles, and say, okay, I want to really heavily compress with an SSL compressor, and then just a gentle compression with a Neve to get a parallel type compression. But the problem gets to be the actual physical management of windows. Because you open up your channel, and then you open up, let's say you have 2 sends and 4 inserts on the channel. And you want to see all those parameters to really dial that channel in. You open up the channel, then you open up the 2 send effects. You move the windows so they're not over top of each other. You then open up the 4 inserts, move those windows around. You get everything dialed up. It's like, oh, it's great. I can see everything just like a console. And then you're like, oh, now I want to go to a different channel. Close all those windows. do this whole process over again, open up all their plugin windows, different plugin, maybe a different size windows, they may not all fit on your screen. So we thought, okay, we can do this better because we're going to give all this processing capabilities directly in the console. So I'm going to come here and say, okay, I want a noise gate on this channel, and I want a noise gate on that channel and this channel. Now we can also have extended controls. So I can see kind of an abbreviated set of controls. Like on my noise gate, I can see the threshold and release. But let's say I wanted to gate out the hi-hat frequencies from my kick drum mic. I can come right here and show all of my channel controls, where I can actually dial in different frequencies. Or I can say this channel, instead of having one compressor like you do on a hardware console, I have 3 different compressors. I have a standard compressor here, and I wanted a tube compressor there and a vintage compressor here. And here I want a vintage compressor. But let's say on this channel, I wanted to have my tube compressor, but I wanted the tube compressor in the signal flow to come before the noise gate. So we thought it'd be cool if you could just drag and drop and change the order of the signal flow, just like that. Now we saw before that the EQ came after the inserts but before the channel strip in the signal flow. Let's say I want the EQ to be between the compressor and the noise gate. I could change the signal flow position of the channel EQ to anywhere that I want in the system. And let's say, okay, I like that envelope shaper. That was totally cool. I went on that channel, and this channel. And I want saturation, so I can say, okay, I want this to sound like an analog tape track, but this one I want to be like a tube saturation. And now I can come right over here and say, okay, I want it to have a brick wall limiter, so you get a brand new limiter, and a maximizer there, a standard limiter. And you can just come here and build your console exactly how you want and just kind of scroll up or down. But let's be really kind of obscene about this, and I'm going to say, I want to take all of my channels. So I'm going to take 68 channels. If I hold down my shift key this time. So I'm going to select all my channels, and let's add 68 noise gates. And I'm going to turn on my quick link, that would help. And now, so 68 noise gates. Oh, well, did that take a long time? Let's add 68 vintage compressors. Okay, let's add 68 envelope shapers. And now, I don't want a 24-track tape machine because I got 68 tracks. Tape saturation on every channel. And let's now add a limiter, a brick wall limiter on every single channel. Now, if this wasn't kind of like, I've seen enough with the signal routing, I could have independent side chains for the noise gate, the compressor, and the envelope shaper. So I got 3 independent side chains within the signal flow of the channel strip itself. So now I'm going to save this as configuration 2. So now, I want to see everything available. I can just click 1. I want to see all my channel strips laid out for me. I click on 2, 1 mouse click. Now we're also like super cool is I can come right over here, so I have all of this flexibility right there, and I can just build my console. Now, just to give you an idea, and it's not going to sound awesome, but just kind of give you an idea, that's 408 processes going on, in addition to everything I had going on before. And if I go to my performance, I'm only running like, 30% of my CPU with all those processes engaged. So they're incredibly efficient. I remember literally within an hour, you can start downloading the Cubase update at midnight on December 5th. At 1 a.m. I got a call from David Kahn, who's did like Ingrid Michaelson's last record. He's done Tony Bennett, Sugar Ray. He's also done a ton of. He just did Paul McCartney's son's record. He's done 4 or 5 records with Paul as well. And he just called me up. He's like, this channel strip just sounds amazing. You know, he's like, I have, you know, and he has like a Pultec that, you know, Paul McCartney's bass was recorded through on Beatles tracks. He has the actual unit from Abbey Road Studios. You know, he has like every imaginable piece of outboard gear. So what's cool about that is, you know, the workflow is so significantly improved that he's just building his console right here, and he's just so ecstatically happy that he could have this, and the sound quality was so good.
So Greg,
Yep.
I know you're on a roll.
I'll take a breath.
Okay. Now, I just wanted to confirm, the EQ that you see in the channel strip references the same EQ
It's
that's
the same EQ here.
that's up above?
Yep.
Okay, great, okay.
So let's say I want to build a different kind of channel strip here. So what I can do now, since I'm just gonna turn off my side chains here real quick. All right, so got kind of all your tracks playing, and now let's say I want to build a different rack configuration. So I go to my racks, and as I do this, I'm going to say, okay, I want to see routing, pre, inserts, and sends. So now I could just open up all of my insert, sends, routing, and let's save this as a configuration. So now I come here, oh, I want to see everything kind of laid out, or I want to see all of just the channel strips, or all just my insert, sends, EQs. One mouse click. True, you can do it independently if you want, and yeah, spend about 20 minutes getting a big project set up, and it, yes, oh, I want to go back and change this one thing, or one mouse click and save the configuration. Now, one thing that always kind of irked me, that I would go to people's houses, and then I would see people, like, you know, they had an 8-track project, they would have 8 insert effects of like a convolution reverb loaded up. And they're like, why is Cubase so CPU unfriendly? It's amazing. You know, it's like you're running 8 convolution reverbs. You're like, yeah, I see it as an insert, but not a send. You know, in all fairness, it's a fair point, because you'd have to add the effects channel send kind of either on the project window, pretty unintuitive, or in the VST connections, even less intuitive. So I kind of shamed them into saying, okay, wouldn't it be cool if you could actually just have all your tracks selected? We're going to enable the quick link. And now I'm going to say, let's add effects channel send to 2. So I want to come here, I want to delay. So I type in DEL. Okay, so I want mono delay. I hit add track. And now my effect is send has automatically been added. I can come here, set my level, and then kind of just tweak to my heart's delight and have my reverb sends, my delay sends added that quickly. Yep.
So that with the send, there's not a send section vertically. You have to do the multiple selects and then create a send, or can you? Is there just like there's inserts? Is there a send?
To add the send, yeah, just right click on the send slot.
Oh, okay. So there's a send.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
So that way it's very easy to set up. Now let's say I wanted to come over here and I want to see the channel view. This is where we spend a lot of time in the mixer on the particular channel. So let's say if I wanted to go to my snare track, for instance, like where we see our inserts on the left, and we'll have our, so I click here on the edit button. So we're kind of used to this view where you see our inserts here, our channel EQ. So this will be our sends laid out for us right there. So when I come here, I can now just solo. So if I want to listen to just the snare track here, and I can see the EQ and the frequencies that are going on. So my volume control. So what we've added in the EQ is we're going to have our pre-section. So we're going to have the high cut, low cut filter, as well as the gain and phase inverse added here. I see my spectrum analysis for my snare track, but I can also go to my channel strip here, and I can add my channel strip functionality. So when I come here, I can say, okay, I want that compressor, that noise gate, the tape saturation, my envelope shaper, and my limiter. And now if I click here, I can now see my channel strip controls all laid out. So one mouse click, my EQs, one mouse click, all of my channel strips, and I could just change the order of the channel strips right here on the left-hand side. And you'll see the signal flow automatically change. Now, even as I had done this and I've hidden my EQ view, I still see my EQ here in the lower left-hand corner. So if I wanted to tweak that, now I could also just go right back to my EQ view. Or if I want to add more reverb, or if I wanted to, I could click on the routing and I could then pan that reverb independently on any particular channel. So I have one stereo reverb that's panned independently anywhere that I want. And then we can say, oh, wouldn't it be cool, like we saw before, that I took my snare track, I routed it to a group, and that group to the master output. So wouldn't it be cool if I could actually see that entire signal flow? So I click here, and now I can see the output change. So I can say, okay, here's my snare channel, this is the group, this is the output, and now I could actually come here and just jump. Okay, I want to go to my drum bus. There I'm looking at my drum group, and now I can look at my output channels and just kind of go back, so I can kind of go through the whole signal flow of that particular channel.
Just give you a little breather there. Like one of the things that's pretty hot right now, or for a number of years, is I'm going to parallel compress. Right, so you'll have another fader. You may do it a couple, whatever you do. Where's that fader again? Even if you have them separated, this will show you the chain all next to each other. So you have constant control of that source and whatever you're doing to it. So it's very slick.
Now, we also can see cue mixes here. And we'll get into this in just a minute, because one of the biggest changes was the inclusion of the control room inside of the mixer. We used to have a separate control room mixer, and it was like incredibly powerful, but it had some weird terminology that we changed to make it a lot more clear. But we also now, instead of it being a separate, independent mixer, it's now integrated directly here. So let's say first we want to look at metering. So I actually look at meters. I could actually switch between different metering scales. So I could choose my alignment level of my converters. So if I'm at minus 18 or minus 20, minus 24 dB. If I want to see full digital scale, I can just kind of come here, and as I play,
we're gonna get it right. We're gonna crank it up. And maybe start a fight.
well, let's say I wanted to see
Time
DIN
is running out.
or EBU scale, so European Broadcast Union, or what the BBC uses,
It's time. It's not the end.
Nordic scale, or CAT System 20, 14, or 12. I can also see my loudness tab here. And what this will actually do is it'll show me your momentary maximum volume range, as well as the short term, your integrated, the range, and the true peak. So you can actually see, because what's happening a lot, especially in broadcast scenarios, is how like commercials used to be so much louder than the TV programs. That's kind of against the law to do now. And Europe and the European Union actually outlawed it last summer, and we're seeing it now in the United States as well. So that's kind of regulated. So a lot of times when we have, like, especially our post clients doing stuff for broadcast, like Brian and I have a friend who does a lot of stuff for Discovery Channel, and if he has one sample of his mix that's over minus 20 dB, it's immediately rejected. And he has to do the mix again on his dime. And he doesn't like that. He actually spent a lot of money on Dolby meters, thousands and thousands of dollars, to kind of circumvent that situation because it became such an issue. Now you can actually see it right here in the metering options of your control room. Now, one of the concepts of the control room is to have a separate monitoring volume. We see a lot of people take their master fader and they're going into like powered speakers like we're doing now, and they drop their master fader way down because their speakers are cranked up, And then they do an export audio mix down to like deliver their mix. And they're like, yeah, Cubase sounds really wimpy. And it's like, okay, let's look at your project. It's like, oh, you told the master fader to drop down 36 dB, so it's going to sound kind of quiet, you know? You're going into powered monitors. Yeah, of course. You know, like, okay, you need to activate the control room, because the control room will control the monitoring volume without affecting the gain structure of the mixer. So that way the mixer has the same gain structure, but it's just my control room volume. Now I could also come here and have some really nifty monitoring options. So I could have it set to dim. So if I want to listen to my mix very softly. A lot of people do this to make sure like your snare and like vocal can be heard in like a pop tune. A lot of people mix at this level, the entire track. Elliot Shiner, amazing engineer, mixes like, this is way loud for him, mixing. Now you can also set a dim level. So let's say you're here, you can actually set a reference level. So there's a lot of times people mixing for film have chosen to mix at their monitoring volume of 85 dB. And they found that that translates well to a lot of different listening environments. So you could actually come here, get a little dB meter, and adjust your monitoring level, and when it hits 85 dB, click this button, and that will automatically recall your 85 dB signal level. So that way you have your reference level recalled directly within your monitoring system. Now something else that's really handy is this concept called a listen bus. So when I'm playing my track, when I solo a track, everything else mutes. Now we can also have a listen bus. This is what this little L is. And what that'll do is dim the other tracks down. So you hear this one kind of just more pronounced. So if I wanted to listen to my snares, a little more on top. Or to my drums. So you can still listen to the groove and make sure that's working. Now, how many of you guys have more than one pair of speakers that you mix on? All right, and how do you switch with your speakers?
Man, I usually have on my interface on ABM interface. Like I'll turn one channel volume down.
Okay, so you just got to manually do it through your interface.
I don't have a way to switch them on and off.
All right, you have Cubase?
No, I have Cubase Artist 6. I don't have 7.
Okay. When you upgrade to Cubase 7, you can now come right over here, and then we thought it'd be cool if you could have your speaker control right here. So we use the available outputs of your audio interface, and now you can say, okay, I have Yamahas, JBLs, Gentle X, or Adams, or we're like listening to the cool Eve monitors. So now what I can do is actually just come here and switch between my different speakers. So here, if I want to listen to it in mono or stereo, make sure that my mono mix works. So let's say when you do this, sometimes every speaker, bigger speakers, smaller speakers, they sound different volumes, right? Different wattages, right? It's pretty typical. And the trick is when you switch speakers, if one's a little bit louder, it's going to sound better to our ears. It's just our brains are stupid that way. So what you can do is click on your setup window and go to your speakers, and you can set independent gain levels right here for each speaker, so that when you switch speakers, it'll be consistent in volume. So, or if you have like NS10s, you're like, okay, I know I want NS10s, and but I really want to EQ the NS10s because I just can't stand listening to them otherwise. You could actually have 8 plugins per speaker as well. Or if you wanted to have a limiter, so, you know, like I was at Hans Zimmer studio, and he has this like totally elaborate, super stupid expensive speaker switcher. And no matter what speaker switching system you have, it colors the sound, period. Right? The most direct signal path is converter to monitor. But sometimes people are worried if the computer goes, if something goes wrong in your computer and it freaks out. You can actually just put a limiter plug in right there. So, Han Solo is like, why do we have this stupid box? Why don't we just do this and just hit the button? If it's like a total panic situation, he's like, what do I do? I'm like, why don't you just get a power strip? Because all you're doing is turning the power off from your $10,000 box. This little thing I got at Walmart for $3, boom, will kill the power to your powered monitors just as easily. He's like, yeah. I was like, stupid, why am I doing that? Because you could actually, if you're doing like 5.1 to quad to stereo to mono, you could actually fold down all of your mixes within your control room as well. Now we also have the ability of having external inputs if you wanted to reference, like if someone's actually listening to, like, you have the client comes in, oh, make me sound like this artist, and they bring in an iPod or a CD. Or let's say you want to communicate with the artist so you don't have to scream and say, hey, let's play that track again. You don't feel cool doing that in a session. But we have also set up, you have up to 4 different cue mixes. So when I actually come here, I can now look at my cues. So I'm going to come here and we see cue mixes. Now our cue mixes are set up, and this is one of the areas that the terminology, and I just really embarrassed our developers with this. I was like, because it used to be you would have a headphone mix, and it would say headphones and studios. And you had one headphone mix, and that was supposed to be the headphones in the control room. And then you had 4 studios, and those were the headphone mixes for the musicians or performers. I was like, everyone has that backwards. You realize that, right? No one can figure this out. So I was like, why don't you use the term headphone mix or cue mix? So they're like, just look at me and go, yeah, actually there's no good explanation for that. Sorry. And they're like, okay, so they changed the name to cue mixes. So when we look at our cue mixes here, I have 4 set up, and I have, like, if I'm doing this, I can use the headphone outs on my UR22 or my MR816. I can use additional outputs if you don't have enough headphone outs, like out of your audio interface, like 2 stereo outs into like a headphone amplifier system, like a PreSonus or a Behringer headphone amp system. So when I look at this, I see these 4 sliders, and if I go to my bass track, I can now turn on my bass track and send it, so this will be my vocal mix, my guitar, bass, and drums. So now I can say, I want to send the bass signal to the drummer's headphone mix, to the bass player's headphone mix, to the guitar player's headphone mix, a little less, and to the singer's headphone mix. And you can do this track by track for 4 cue mixes for 68 tracks. And what's the word that describes that process? That sucks. All right, so I'm going to come here. Let's cheat. So I'm going to come right there and say, okay, I'm going to select all the channels, activate
How do you
quickly.
really feel, though?
I won't hold back. Now I'm going to right click. I'm going to say let's activate, and let's turn on all the cue sends. 1 mouse click. 1 more mouse click. I'm going to say let's use the current mix levels, because often the musicians want what's called a more me headphone mix. So the drummer wants to hear more of themselves in the headphones. The bass player, more of themselves. Guitar player, singer, same thing. So now I'm taking my mix that I have right here, and now it's automatically been translated across all of the different headphone mixes. And I'm going to use one more mouse click. I'm going to use my current pan settings. So 4 mouse clicks, I have my cue mix set up, so they're hearing exactly the same mix I'm hearing in my studio. So now I'm going to select my drum tracks. I go to cue mix 4. Okay, the drums, we're going to make the drums louder in cue mix 4 for the drummer. The bass player, he's going to hear more of himself. I'm going to select the guitar tracks and then turn the guitar player up in the guitar tracks. So now when I'm in my control room section, I could actually come here and I could say, I can now listen to the individual headphone mixes. So I can hear my mix. So then I'm here. I want to hear the drummer's headphone mix. I click on cue mix 4. I go to the bass player's headphone mix. Guitar player's headphone mix. if I have this external input, I can have 6 external inputs. So let's say someone brought in their iPod, right? And sometimes you get paid by the hour when you're tracking, right? And sometimes I've seen the best engineers and producers in the world be geniuses at padding time in sessions because they get paid by the hour, right? And it's an art form. Phil Ramone's genius at it. I saw him. I was helping him with the Peter Sincati session, and it's kind of like a jazz piano player. And I remember this guy's like playing his heart out in the Avatar Studios in New York, and then, you know, as soon as he would start playing, Phil would just turn the control room volume down and just start talking with everyone. He would just kind of nod his head to the artist. He's just seeing him in a, you know, through the glass, and it's like, yeah, cool. And then as soon as he, you know, Phil would see that he's done playing, you know, the performance of his life, he's playing for Phil Ramone, Phil would just kind of turn up his talk back. He's like, yeah, let's take a listen to that in its entirety. And then he would listen to it. It was like, oh great, you know, you just added 5 minutes to this session. You know, you can do that 10 times, 12 times, 24 times. Boom, you made some extra cash, you know. So there's like different little tricks people will do. But what you can do here is you can have an external input and say, okay, I brought in my iPod, and then I'm going to listen to the iPod while they're tracking. Or let's say the musician, the drummer, nailed his take in the first time, but you know sometimes if the drummer gets up and takes his headphones off, walks across the studio, it's going to be totally disruptive. You can now say the drummer is now listening to the iPod, but everyone else is listening to their own cue mix. Now something else that's really critical with cue mixes is the click track. And this is a problem in a lot of big consoles, is you have the click track, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, the drummer, bass player, and guitar player, they want to hear the click track in their headphones, but the singer doesn't. It's distracted. They don't hear beep, 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 beep constantly in the headphones. It could be off key. So you can just come right there, the singer doesn't hear the click. Or let's say the singer, they always want to hear a little bit of reverb in their headphones. You can now just come right here, and that's right, you have 8 plug-in slots, so you can have reverb in their headphones. Now we also have this little handy talk button right here. So, and in my studio I have this set up with a foot switch, and then we have talk enable right here. So now I could, instead of screaming at the musicians, I could actually just turn on the TE button, and I would say, wow, that was really close, guys. Let's try one more time. Take the bass player's cue mix off. Yeah, the bass player screwed up the third verse. Everyone smile. We're just gonna do it again. Humor me, thanks. All right, let's do it. So you can pick and choose who you're communicating with and who's actually listening to you with your control room. Now the beauty of this is it's all saved with the project. So when you're actually, you know, you need to call up that session 2 weeks later, you have the same exact headphone mix, period. I remember one of my friends, John Carroll, who lives just outside DC, when he was 18, his like summer job out of high school was he was playing in a band called Starland Vocal Band. Remember Afternoon Delight? Those people. And he was telling me, you know, he's like, you know, I was, you know, and Brian's been to his house as well. Super nice guy, and he's written a bunch of songs with Mary Chapin Carpenter and other artists. Just a truly wonderful musician. And he's just telling me, you know, when he was working on it, that they actually recorded it in DC, Nashville, LA, New York. And he's like, yeah, you know, none of the takes really worked until we got to New York. And it's like, and the thing I'll never forget, you know, is that we had such a great sounding headphone mix from Phil Ramone, who did the track. He's like, the headphone mix sounded so amazing that we all sang better, and the whole performance was significantly better, not because of anything technical, not because we were better musicians than we were a week before or 2 weeks earlier. It's just because the headphone mix was dialed in, and that was so inspiring to us that we all sang better. And he's like, it's the one thing no one ever talks about in engineering books and stuff like that, is how critical that headphone mix is to the actual performers. So really important to have that headphone mix and be able to call that back up at any time when you open up that session. And to have that truly integrated so you can have all those control room functionalities where a lot of people have just a console. And I see like so many like edit suites and post houses, and they have a console for a volume knob and for, you know, a talk back if they have a voiceover artist. You can just simply do this all in the software realm and save lots and lots of money. And just, you know, have your project turn out better. Now, one of the things, we actually pulled Charlie Steinberg out of retirement.
Real quick, Greg,
Yeah.
was there a question?
Yes, there was.
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank
Yep.
you. Can you go back to the mixer?
No. Okay.
So, you're cutting a brand new vocal track. You've got guitars, you've got basses, you've got drums. Everything's recorded. You got it the way you want it to sound. You're ready to do the final vocal. You want to hear certain elements of the mix. When you add a new vocal track over here, and you click the monitoring button, will all of this functionality be available when you dial in the vocal headphone mix?
Yep.
So it's not just for maybe things that are already down.
No.
You can put
Yeah.
the new stuff in
Yep.
there.
So
Okay.
as you're tracking, just be able to monitor it.
Okay. All right.
Pretty cool.
And the
Yeah.
other thing is,
Very
if it's a common vocal chain that you use or a setup, you can do
Save it as a track
Save it as
preset.
a track preset.
Yeah.
And
There's also
load that
hundreds
track
of different
preset.
presets for the channel strip to come with the program done by Alan Morgan, a friend of Brian. And
Because that's been my issue is I got the track, it's happening, it's what I want, and then I go to do the vocals and everything's too high. And I can't hear. And so then it's like, oh, do I grab everything and just bring it all down, or okay?
Yeah, or just take your vocal up there. Or you could just go to your pre-section. You know, sometimes like, oh, everything's way up and it's not loud enough. Go to your gain
Okay.
right there.
There you go. All right.
So,
Thank you. Thank you. You solved my weekend. Thank you.
all right. So, we all know, do we all have friends that we've grown up playing music with that live in different places? All right, and when we like to record them, say, oh, my friend Bob is such a great guitar player, but now he lives in Tampa, and I haven't seen him in 20 years. He just actually called me up because he bought a UR22. He's like, hey, do you know about this thing? This thing's awesome. You know, like, yeah, it's my company. You know, you got the right one. He's like, oh, neat. So, Charlie Steinberg, the namesake Steinberg, we started a company 29 years ago. He actually kind of retired and is now playing in a band. They're called, I think, Four Bald Monks or something like that in German. So, a creative name. But they all live in different parts of the city, right? And it's probably like Seattle, right? Getting across the lake at 6 o'clock, no fun, right? That's why we do a clinic on this side and the other side. We understand that, Or do you have a friend who moved down to Portland or up in Vancouver? They're just away for a weekend, kind of up in Bellingham area or Spokane, whatever. So Charlie Steinberg wanted to record his friends, but they all lived in different parts of the city. So he said, wouldn't it be cool if we could just open up a little plug-in called VST Connect SE, and then you could actually come here if you have your internet connection, and now you could actually see kind of like a little webcam. It's not the best lighting here. And what you can actually do is you log in once you have an internet connection, and it gives you a code. We were so nice because now anyone can download this software on the performer end, absolutely free of charge. Why do we do that? Because it's the right thing to do. They don't have to buy Cubase. So they do that. They enter this code in. If they have a webcam, you could actually see them pop up right there. So you can say, no, sing in the front of the microphone. So you can do stuff like that, or try. Your picking is really weird on a guitar. Try this instead. So you can actually see them. All right. And what happens is you put this on your input channel. It'll then actually, you could send them like more click track, more of the mix. You could actually apply compression, send them a little bit of reverb. You hit record, you'll hear like a little bit of, there'll be a little bit of a delay while all the buffering is going on. Everything will be in time. So it goes out to the performer. The performer, here's the track, they sing, or play the guitar part, play the bass part, and keyboard part. It's recorded over the internet as a FLAC file back directly into your Cubase project. So they're anywhere in the world, and you could just simply track them remotely over the internet.
Real quick, does everybody know what FLAC is?
So it's a free lossless audio compression. So this way you're not going to have any degradation when you actually kind of take it from the compressed file to the full resolution file. Now the beauty of this is the artist performing, they don't have to be a Cubase user, and they don't have the file on their side. So they're just performing in real time and it's being transmitted. And all of the latency is kind of automatically compensated for. So when you're hearing it, everything is in sync throughout this entire process. Now, other beautiful aspects, you don't have to pay like a $9.95 a month service fee for this. You don't have to create an account. You don't have to give us your email address. You don't have to come up with a dedicated password that's 9 characters long with 1 capital letter, 1 special character, and 2 numbers, you know, some obscure configuration. You don't have to do any of that. So you just simply record, and then the other person, they could have a UR22 and just record and track directly in or with any other audio interface. So one of the guys that works with us, based in Los Angeles, his name's Kevin Doucette. He was like on the faculty at Berkeley for film scoring, but he works a lot with a guy named A.R. Rahman in Los Angeles, and he's kind of like the Michael Jackson of India. He's well known in America for winning the Oscar for Slumdog Millionaire. For being film composer for that. He did 127 hours. So AR goes back and forth between Los Angeles and India. So, you know, he sometimes could have an easier time finding like a great sitar player or santur player or tabla player in India than LA, in Santa Monica, you know. So what they're able to do now is just record musicians in India directly online and have that tracked in LA, or be in India and record someone in LA and back and forth. One of my other friends, Danny Lux, who does a number of different TV shows, including like Grey's Anatomy, which he's, you know, and he does like 6 or 7 shows at a time somehow. You know, he lives in Agora Hills, which is on kind of the outskirts of LA. I think it might be just over the county line in Ventura County, but his partner, Matt Mariano, lives in, you know, in Burbank, and if you flew a helicopter, it might be 20 miles, but you know, in traffic, it could take 2 hours. So now, you know, Danny called me up. He's like, "Does this thing work?" I'm like, "Yeah, try it out. You'll like it." He just called me up like an hour later. He's like, "This is the greatest thing ever," you know, because it's always hard for him to get musicians to go out to his house because he's in the outskirts. But yeah, he's got this incredible, beautiful setting for his studio, and it's a great house for his family. And now he can just track musicians remotely, and again, free, totally included with Cubase. Now we've also been doing some other things. How many of you guys have an iPad or tablet?
Hey Greg, can I add one thing?
Yeah.
The one thing that we would strongly suggest is when attempting to use this, use wired. Yes, wireless may work, but
For best results,
plug in. That'll be your best choice.
Now we've also been busy doing stuff because we see that a lot of people have tablet computers. I hear they're kind of popular. Have we seen them? So one of the things we did is we came out in December with Cubase for iPad. So it's a little touchscreen version, 48 tracks of audio, MIDI sequencing. Plus you're going to have virtual instruments from the Halion Sonic SE that are included. We have the audio bus support. There's already been an update for it, adding more functionality. And what's great about it is it's the first time you could actually take your files from your tablet app and actually then import it directly into Cubase to finish it. So direct file compatibility, so you can start it on Cubase for iPad and then take it directly to your full-blown Cubase. We know that tablets are cool and are popular, but we know that, you know, there's a certain satisfaction with doing it on a real computer. You know, we can do a tremendous amount on a laptop, and sometimes the tablets still don't have like super processing power or what everyone thinks they do. So we're not going to be the guys that say, oh, okay, we're going to abandon the typical computer and go tablet only, because it's not going to meet our customers' needs and expectations. But we want to be able to have people that can capture an idea and realize their creativity. So we see that. Now we've also, last month, released a new app called Cubase IC Pro. And this is a remote control app. You could do your mixing, treat it like a control surface. You could have A number of defined keyboard shortcuts. So, okay, I want my talk back, I want undo, I want quantize. You can define keyboard shortcuts. You can do tap tempo. As you're kind of tracking, you can see the project overview on the window. So if you wanted to see a punch in, you could actually see the whole project and say, okay, punch in now. You do your mix. But the coolest thing is, each musician, if they're tracking, if they have this app on their iPad or their iPhone, they could actually do their own headphone mixes. So the drummer could sit there, oh, give me more bass, less vocal, more organ. And the organ player goes, okay, I need more kick and less guitar. And they can do their own cue mixes right there. So again, using that capability intelligently in conjunction with Cubase. And that's, like, what, $16? You know, or you can buy a Mackie control that will die in a couple months and for $1,000, you know. But you have your choice. Now, we also, last summer, one of our competitors, was working with a program called Sibelius, a really high-end notation package. Their developers, their parent company was a US-based company, and their developers were based in England. And ironically, on the 4th of July, they flew over and fired them without any notice. And there's a bit of outrage online that's still going on. So this team had developed a fantastic high-end engraving scoring package. Did all the right things. It got acquired by the big company, and then all of a sudden it's, oh, what happened? It's like we're doing all this, and now everyone's fired, and we don't have jobs. And they were told that they're going to be replaced by outsourcing their developers with people in the Ukraine. So they're like, okay, and music software is very specialized. A high-end notation package is even very specialized for a music software package. So they were a little miffed. But eventually the parent company came back and said, you know what, we couldn't really find those people in the Ukraine. You want your job back? And they all said no. And the reason was because they've all signed up with Steinberg. And so they're happy Steinberg employees. We spent a fortune on setting up their office in London. We kept their team, the core team that have been doing the program for 15 years. So 12 of the developers are now working on a brand new high-end notation program for Steinberg. We'll see those scoring features trickle into Cubase over time. And you could actually, what's great about it is their developers are phenomenally great at communicating with the customers. So they actually started a blog, and they're basically, hey, whatever you want to see, let us know. Now is the time to give us your fantasy feature list, because we're making a program. We have a lot of good ideas. We knew that we wanted to basically take the entire thing and start over again. You don't have that opportunity much in life as a software developer to start all over again, knowing what you know after years and years of experience, and say, wow, I wish I didn't paint myself into a corner code development-wise. So those are the kind of investments that Steinberg is making, because we want to do the right thing for the customer. We want to offer the best functionality. We want to make sure that we're on all the latest operating systems, that we have the best hardware solutions with our UR interfaces, that we have the best content, the best instruments, that we're working closely with Yamaha to develop sounds, because they make incredible keyboards and synths. They make incredible hardware, incredible mic pre's. So all this kind of synergy of technologies and doing the right thing and not being so Wall Street in kind of our approach to things. Because we have customers that, whether it's you're writing your first song, whether you're just tracking your guitar part, whether you're trying to, resurrect a song you did that you wrote for your wife 20 years ago, or something you did like the first time you went to the studio, or if you're, Stevie Wonder who still writes a song every day in Cubase, or if you're Hans Zimmer who's now working, finishing up Man of Steel, which will be the big, huge blockbuster this year, the next Superman film, or you're doing The Dark Knight, or you're doing Shrek, or you're doing, Peter Frampton's latest DVD. David, you're nominated for a Grammy this year, right? Yeah, David's done incredible work doing surround mixing in Cubase. These are all very important, and we realize that we make tools that people can realize their creativity. And I'll just play you one quick project.
Before you do that, I have a statement and then I have a question.
Sure.
Which goes along with your starting to get all emotional and like, you know. So continuing that is, I just wanted to say with you guys that my life would be very different than what it is without you guys. I'm very, 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 very appreciative. Then the question is with the mixer and stuff, compatibility with previous mixes?
Yep, your mixers will just load right up.
Will they?
Yep.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Hey Greg, before you jump into showing this, you don't have to go through exactly, but can you just launch the Voxengo EQ and
Sure.
just and kind of explain what it does?
Yeah, one of the things we actually developed this great plugin about maybe 12 or maybe about 14 years ago called Free Filter. It was kind of a revolutionary concept. And basically what you could do is play a track, and it would kind of take like a sonic EQ fingerprint of that track. So you can say, wow, this track, you know, sounds like, you would say we had Phil's track we were listening to earlier. You go, I want my track to sound like Phil's track, because that sounded awesome. It just had to have, you know, all the frequencies were just nailed, but my track doesn't quite sound like that. So you can take Phil's track, kind of take an EQ fingerprint of it, take your track, take an EQ fingerprint of it, and then say, oh, what frequencies were missing? And fill in those frequencies that were cool in Phil's track that I don't have in mind. So that's what the curve EQ.
So what
allows you to
website
do.
your stuff
I actually did this with, I did it once at an AES show, and I was using a Steely Dan track versus like some other demo, and then right in the middle I'm doing it, Roger Nichols sat down. And I'm like, oh, this isn't good. You know? And then he comes up after, he's like, you know, we spent 3 weeks on that kick drum. Just a kick drum, 3 weeks getting this out. You know, it's like, you ripped off the whole sonic spectrum in about 15 seconds. It's like, I hate you, but where can I buy it today?
So, because Marcel was asking about it. So you give a disc, play a song in it, you know, really
Yeah.
rock, whatever. You can capture that image of it, so to say.
Yeah.
And, or that, actually Greg said it better, that fingerprint, and have this plugin apply that fingerprint to what you're doing. It's really simple.
Matching up, you know, let's say you recorded vocalists with two different, like on the same track, but two different microphones. You know, because it's always great. I see so many projects. I see like people start their project, and you know, over time it sounds different because they're getting more gear and they're getting better with stuff. And it's like, yeah, I first started the vocal with an SM57, and then I got this cool like, you know, ribbon microphone. It was just great, but the two sound different. You know, so now you can actually kind of match up and kind of give a nice kind of homogeneous nature to it. But you know, one of the things again we do is, you know, we realize that we give tools that are really for kind of realizing your creativity. And this is kind of an interesting project. My friend Clay Ostwald gave me, who's like musical director for Gloria Estefan, and he's like one of those guys, anything he touches just sounds kind of magical. There was a guy who's based in the Pacific Northwest named Dan Reed, based out of Portland. He was kind of signed, I think with Polygram in the late 80s for the Dan Reed Network. He's a very spiritual guy, you know, he's kind of famous, Robin, kind of went to Israel and kind of, you know, tried to figure life out, and, you know, but a very interesting guy. And he was just kind of looking for ideas to be inspired. And he came across a soliloquy from a Charlie Chaplin film. And, you know, Charlie Chaplin, if you're not so familiar with his history, still did silent films way after silent films were, you know, not being done at all. But he did 6 films out of, I think, 92 that had dialogue. And one of them was called The Great Dictator. And he did this in 1940. And it was pretty much what he saw coming from Europe, especially with Hitler. So it was actually kind of a comedic film. But he did this very powerful soliloquy at the end. So he was so inspired by this that he wrote a song based around it. And he actually wrote the Chaplin Group, which is in Switzerland, because actually Charlie Chaplin, like during McCarthy era, was kicked out of our country. So he was kind of, just kicked out of the country, and he was a little bitter about it. But he was so moved by this that he wrote a song, and this is the only time that the Chaplin Group's ever given permission for anyone to use any of the video footage or the audio from this film in a song. So, but it's pretty amazing how relevant, from 73 years ago, this project is. And if I make sure the audio is, I probably have my control room set up. Great. And this is only like 93 tracks.
I don't want to be an emperor. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white, black man, black man, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls. It has barricaded the world with hate. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. We think too much and feel too little. Our knowledge has made us cynical. Our cleverness hard and unkind. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than machinery, we need humanity. I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed. The bitterness of men fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. Even now my voice is reaching millions throughout the world. Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture. The brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, or what to feel, oblivion loves hate, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, soldiers, don't give yourselves to these unnatural men, don't fight for slavery, machine men, with machine minds and machine hearts, you're not machines, you the people have the power, you the people have the power to make this life free and beautiful. Let us fight for a new world.
All of the angels
life will be violent, and all will be lost, 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 lost.
It's a very neat project. So, there's a responsibility we have as a manufacturer to actually, make sure that we provide these tools and we deliver on the promises that we make, that we set out. We came out, when VST came out in 1996, and people were like, oh, you can never do everything in a computer. We had no idea what we could do, but that's what we kind of set out to do, and that's what we're delivering, where every element of video, every virtual instrument, every effect, every mix, just done on his laptop with the $149 UR22. So to be able to have that freedom and that luxury of, like Clay, who did this project, he used to work on synclaviers 20 years ago. And he said, one of my favorite quotes when he was like, yeah, we spent $350,000 because it could punch in. And we were happy. He's like, this just smokes everything we could ever imagine at that time. So that's what we kind of do at Steinberg, making long-term decisions to do the right thing for the customers, for the market, so you can actually realize your creativity. So I'd like to thank everyone here at Bellevue American Music. We, don't go to every store, obviously, but every time we're in the Pacific Northwest, we stop here because this is such a great store. So Reese, you can't ask for a more experienced music store staff here between Phil, Reese, all the guys. Take advantage of the great service that you have here. This is a very unique environment. You guys are very lucky to have a store like Bellevue American Music here. So if you have any questions, you can come up and ask, and you check with pricing. If you want to do like upgrades, or if you wanted to do, check out the UR22 in person. So anything you want, please come up and ask. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Greg, as always.